Hi guys, welcome back. Craig Peterson here on WGAN. Online, of course, craigpeterson.com. We're going to talk about some of the cloud stuff and what you need to worry about and what you don't need to worry about. In fact, I was at my chiropractor's just this week and talking with him, and he has moved his practice in with another chiropractor. In fact, it's a little bit bigger. They've got massage therapists, and now there's 4 chiropractors there and everything. And he was asking, because he was concerned, they have a system there that is cloud-based. And, time was they would have a server there in the office, maybe in the basement, and they would have their own little firewall. They try and keep things safe. And now that it's out in the cloud, they're really, really worried. So we're going to be getting into that in a few minutes. And then also coming up here at the top of the hour, I've got my friend Barry who's going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about sugar, which is, I guess there's kind of a tech angle to the sugar side, right? With the high fructose corn syrup and some of the problems coming from that. Of course, we're not going to talk about that part of it, but what he's done and the book he has, what you can do. But first off, let's talk about our first cloud topic of the day. And this is about businesses in danger and how they're in danger now from the cloud. The cloud, as I mentioned in the last segment, is not a panacea. It does not relieve you of any responsibility for the data that is in the cloud. So, for instance, if you have patient data, if you have data that is somehow considered privileged or personally identifiable, putting it into a cloud vendor's hand does not relieve you of that responsibility. And if you want to check it out, you can, in fact, with most of the major vendors out there, like Google, for instance, Amazon, you can find their statements online of what it is that they will actually accept responsibility for, which is basically nothing. And that's particularly true if you're not using the business type services. So, for instance, with Office 365, if you're using their email service, for instance, and you're on their lower tier of the platform, you're not going to get security. You're not going to get the ability to really block some of the most malicious type of emails that might be coming in. It's not going to be backed up. They're not going to have some of the multi-factor authentication that you really should have tied in with things maybe like Duo and others, all right? So just because there is a cloud service, it doesn't mean it's safe. And just because a company like Microsoft with the Office 365 does have some pretty darn secure services, don't assume that the lower end services that they have are going to be safe for you either. And there's a great article I have up on my website right now, and it's from HelpNet Security. And it's talking about this subject and saying that 44% of malicious threats are cloud enabled nowadays. Think about that. It's absolutely huge. Time was when the threats were what? Viruses. And we know antivirus software now is pretty much good for nothing, right? Because the antivirus software is not going to protect you from the modern threats. But that's what it was. It was all this virus stuff that might spread and worms that might spread. The basic stuff. But now we're seeing that cybercriminals are using the cloud because it's been an effective method for them to hide their attacks. Because the cloud vendor, again, it's, frankly, this is, saying a lot, aren't I? Frankly, when you get right down to it, you, in a big cloud vendor like a Microsoft or Google or an Amazon or even some of these smaller guys that are still pretty big, you're not even a gnat. You are barely even noticeable. That you will not, by moving to another cloud provider, you will not change their bottom line or their top line. You're not even a rounding error. So how much do you think that they really care about you individually? I've seen this before where what can you do when you are hacked and you're in the cloud? What can you do when their cloud network goes down? What can you do when their software isn't working, when a rollout of their latest release doesn't work? Or maybe it just doesn't work for you and 10,000 other people, which is nothing, right? Because, we got millions of subscribers 10,000 people. Yeah, we'll get right on that for you, sir. Right? Because you're not even in the 1%. Lots of problems here. And when we're talking about the security side, yeah, in some ways it's definitely going to be more secure, but in many ways it's not. There's a quote here from a threat company that they do a lot of research. It's called Netscope, Netskope, and Ray Canizes is the threat research director over there, and he's saying we are seeing increasingly complex threat techniques being used across cloud applications, spanning from cloud phishing and malware delivery to cloud command and control, and ultimately cloud data exfiltration. Of course, data exfiltration is where the bad guys are stealing your bank account information, stealing your intellectual property, stealing your customers' information, etc. Our research shows the sophistication and scale of the cloud-enabled kill chain increasing, requiring security defenses that understand thousands of cloud apps to keep pace with attackers and block cloud threats. For these reasons, any enterprise using the cloud needs to modernize and extend their security architecture. So in other words, what he's saying is any business, because when he says enterprise, I want to bring up a really important point. I was doing some work, doing some training with a bunch of accountants in Ireland. Largest group of accountants in Ireland. And I was explaining some of the security problems that we're seeing here, we're seeing around the world, they're seeing there. And they started talking about enterprises. Now I know what an enterprise is, right? An enterprise is a big business. You think of enterprises here in the United States, and you're thinking about the multi-billion-dollar profits that some of these huge enterprises get. But enterprise means any business, right? Any enterprise you enter into. It's an enterprise for a kid to set up a lemonade stand at the side of the road and sell lemonade to passers-by. That's an enterprise. So they're saying here, and I absolutely agree, that every business, no matter how small, needs to understand the threat, understand that cloud apps aren't the answer, and that you really have to take care of it yourself, because the cavalry isn't coming. You're a gnat, not even a gnat. You're not even a rounding error when it comes to the amount of money these companies make every year. So you have to be your own cavalry. Now, when we're talking about businesses here, they're saying that 89% of businesses are in the cloud. Now, that doesn't mean they're 100% in the cloud. It just means they're using a cloud service. And I bet you when you got right down to it, that number is probably really 100%. Because people are using some of these services that maybe you shouldn't be using, right? They're using the Google Docs and Sheets and all of those types of things. I use Grammarly all of the time. Some of those things can really leak data. So we try and be careful not to use some of the cloud services when it comes to more confidential data. But really, it's 100%. Think about everything you're doing, all of the collaboration tools. People are using Slack, which is not secure, and they're using that to share information within the team. It's a great productivity application. Webmail apps, those are probably the most popular in use today. People using Gmail, or I mentioned Office 365. I have a friend who still uses Yahoo. Who knew that they were still in business doing email, right? And the average business is using 142 different cloud applications. And what I'm just trying to do here now, I'm not trying to scare you away from using the cloud. This isn't just a scare tactic. I'm not trying to sell you, hey, listen, you need to have multiple layers and you have to buy them from me, right? What I want you to do here, my whole goal of talking about this today, is to get you to pay attention to what you're doing and the data that you have up there. We're going to talk about this more when we get back. We'll finish this up. We're going to talk about the new FBI release this week, what they're saying about security and what you can do to help a lot. So stick around. You're listening to Craig Peterson on WGAN. We'll be right back.